Okay, do I need to, I guess I need to check, got it? Is that, Steve, you know this?
Yeah, go ahead and click click
Okay,
yes. Yeah.
okay, top of the first, time to play ball. But first, a word from our sponsor, me. I would like, if any of you out there have pictures of any kind of baseball team from Humboldt County, that would be pre-1900, anything in the 20th century, Little League, Babe Ruth, Legion, or Redwood League, or anything like that. If you can get a copy of that picture to me somehow, either through the Humboldt County Historical Society or directly to me at my email, which is roosterjack62@yahoo.com. My phone number is 707-502-8594. So let's get started. Many of you may know that the game of baseball was invented sort of from a game called Rounders. Rounders was popular in England starting in around 1744, and in 1839 it became the game of baseball in the United States, mostly on the East Coast, of course. It evolved over a long period of time. The rules changed. Some of you may know that in the beginning, in order to get someone out, you threw the ball at them, not at a baseman. But, and of course, the powers in the game continued to tinker with the rules. You also might know that the National League is using the designated hitter this year. There were many amateur teams throughout the years, the early years of baseball. And the first professional team was the Cincinnati Red Stockings in 1869. They toured the country that year and never lost a game. And they came all the way to the West Coast. There's a wonderful book called, I think it's called You'll Never Get Back by Darrell Brock. And it is actually a fictional version of that team, but it's a great, great read. I read it over 30 years ago. So how about Humboldt County? By the way, the title of my talk is more the incomplete history of Humboldt County baseball up to 1944, because there are many stories, pictures, articles, etc. on baseball in Humboldt County out there that I don't have access to yet. I continue to research that, but some of you may have things that you can share with me or the society, and I would love that. Most of the people in Humboldt County, of course, came from the East Coast, and so in 1874, and this is up for dispute as far as the first team in Humboldt County, but in 1874, the Ronerville team played the Ferndale Baseball Club, and the score was 60-20. There were a lot of runs scored in the early years of baseball in Humboldt County. I need to, let's see, how do I click to get, there it is. Okay. Okay. All right. Then in 1873, there was a team called the Blue Stalking Baseball Club that was founded. However, there isn't there aren't any examples or proofs that they actually played a game until 1878. In 1878, you see on your screen a different pair of baseball teams. One is called the Pacific Baseball Club, and the other is the Alerts. And they played a game in Ferndale, and the final score was 74-26. What's amazing about this is they actually recorded the duration of the game, which was 3 hours and 40 minutes. A little bit longer than today's game, but not much. So after these teams were formed, then many other small communities decided they wanted their team too. And here's some examples of some pictures of teams from the late 1800s. This is J&G's team in Fortuna. This is the Ferndale town team. You'll notice the Lowenthal Reliables. So Lowenthal is a very common name out in Ferndale. This looks to me like this might be an all-star team or players that represented different teams that were put together, and they were called the Ferndale Town Team. In the early years of baseball, there would be more an organization. So it wouldn't be just the 9 to 15 baseball players on the team, but there would be an organization, and civilians who were not playing baseball but wanted to be a part of this process could become members of the organization, probably for a fee. And then they would also help the team with uniforms and paying for the fields that they were going to play on, as far as clearing it and marking the bases and everything like that. Almost every community in Humboldt County had a baseball team. Here's the 1903 Blue Lake Elites. Now, this team has a famous baseball player on it, and I think that the date of the picture is incorrect. In the front row, second from the left, is Joe Oscar. Now, we're going to talk about Joe in a second, but he was born in 1890, and I'm guessing he's older than 14 years old in that picture. Plus, he played in the major leagues in the 20s, so I'm guessing also that this picture may actually be from maybe 1914 rather than 1904. So I'll have to do some continual research. Anyone in Humboldt County will recognize the name of the team, the Ivanhoe, the famous restaurant on the corner of Main Street in Ferndale. So let's talk about Joe Oscar. Going back here, you see a baseball card from my collection. And this baseball card, I think, was put out around 1972. It's called Baseball's Famous Feats, and it features Joe Oscar and Leon Cador. So they pitched against each other for 26 innings, not coming out of the game. And at one point, Joe Oscar pitched 20 straight innings of shutout ball. So no runs. In the end, after 26 innings, the score was tied 1-1. And so it was canceled because of darkness. In those days, of course, they did not have lights on the fields. Anyway, Joe Oscar is a famous Ferndale baseball player. He went on to play. That game, by the way, was in 1920. He was pitching for the Boston Braves against the Brooklyn Dodgers. He ended up finishing out his career in 1925 for that same Brooklyn Dodger team. So he was traded at one point. Let's move on in pictures here. This is the Fortuna Town team. Again, even though all these players have the same uniform, I'm guessing that these players played for other teams, but they might have been some of the best players from each team. And so when the Fortuna Town team would play other town teams, they would gather these players together to better represent Fortuna. This is a 1910 team called the M.J. Weber team out of Ronerville. And Franklin Roner is in the front row on the right. So he was likely perhaps even a sponsor of that team. So here's an example of the Arcata baseball team in 1919. And we're going to talk about baseball parks later on, but I believe that this baseball park was the original baseball park in Arcata, which was close to Samoa Boulevard, the current Samoa Boulevard, not in the location where the Crabs play. I had a friend who was part of my dad's breakfast group named Al Masterson. He was born 3 houses up from the current Crabs ballpark. And he said when he was a kid, he used to go to the old ballpark, which he said was down near Samoa Boulevard. I don't have any evidence of the exact location, but you see how flat it is over to the left of the picture. So I'm not surprised that it was down there. It may have been down near F and Samoa Boulevard or whatever the road was called then. Here is a story that was in the Humboldt Historian about Joe Oscar. You can see the story was dated September, October 1975. And so if you have a copy of the old historians, or you can look it up, you can see the entire story of the game between Brooklyn and Boston and Joe Oscar, and his opponent was named Leon Cador. Great history there. This is a picture of 2 teams, TNT and Rolfe baseball teams at Lunar Baseball Park. Now, it's dated May 23rd, 1920. There is some confusion about where the Lunar Baseball Park was. The picture says it was at the corner of Booner and F. It's hard to imagine because there are a lot of older homes in that area. It's hard to imagine that there was a baseball park there. There were parks that were named Booner Baseball Field, Booner Park, and other similar names. But we believe that they were referencing a baseball park that was where Joanne's Fabrics is at the corner of Harris and F Street in Eureka. We're positive that there was a ballpark there eventually, just not sure whether this is in that location or not. However, I don't know if you can see on your screen, but in the background on the right-hand side, you can see a water tower. And so there was a water tower. Actually, there were a couple of water towers at the corner of Harrison F Street. And I believe that this may be in that location where Joanne's Fabrics is. I do have a softball picture in that same ballpark that shows the old General Hospital in the background. So we know for sure this ballpark is in that location. The Humboldt County leagues that existed had many names. 1800s, they had the Humboldt County League, but in the future or in the years after that, it was called the Redwood League, the Humboldt County League, the Humboldt League, Redwood Empire League. And I think it's easy to understand that the organizers of the league, depending on the teams that might be involved, would have changed the names over time. Most of the years, of course, it featured the main communities with baseball teams, and that would be Eureka, Arcata, Samoa, Scotia, but also Blue Lake, Ferndale, Fortuna. And so when you see pictures and they say they're champions of a certain league, it may be just the same type of league, like the top league in Humboldt County, but with a different name. There are many examples of, especially in the 1900s, of players who would go from Eureka or Arcata or Scotia or Samoa, or any one of those teams, to go play for the San Francisco Seals or the Oakland Oaks, or perhaps other teams in the Pacific Coast League. Know that the Pacific Coast League was, at that time, considered on a par with the American National Leagues. And in fact, there were efforts through the years of trying to get it to become the third major league. It didn't happen, of course, but it tells you about the quality of the players in our leagues here in Humboldt County, because they were borrowed or loaned to the Pacific Coast League teams. In this picture, you'll see that all the players say Eureka on their uniforms, except for, actually, that's not right. There's a fellow in the middle. I can't read what the name is, but the fellow on the right is Nick Williams. Nick Williams was a manager for the San Francisco Seals in 1924 and 1925. And here he shows up, and we're not sure the year of this team, but here he shows up managing the Eureka team in the Humboldt County League. I'm going to have to read this, but there were many examples of players, and I wanted to give you some names who went to Civic Coast League. 1922, Dave Bambino Kyle went from Arcata to the Seals, as did George Taxi Valencia from the Eureka Club. Bookie Harrington, the great shortstop from Scotia, ended up playing for the Detroit Tigers that same year. Here are players playing in Humboldt County and in the same year ending up in the major leagues. That tells you that there was a very high quality level of baseball going on. I'm going to read this because I want to be sure to get it correct. One of the famous baseball players of the time was Sam Beer. And in the July 20th, 1922 Humboldt Times, they featured him with the following article titled "Leads Humboldt Box Artists." It reads, Sammy Beer, Arcata's star right-hander, who is the leading twirler for the Humboldt County Baseball League, is a shining example of what control mixed with plenty of stuff will do for a box artist. You notice that the terminology describing players and what they can do is a lot different than they do today. Many fans are of the opinion that beer wins his games by using the spitball, but this is not true. Sammy uses the saliva ball on occasions, but has a great array of other slants to depend upon and is endowed with uncanny control. It is a known fact that if beer depended entirely on the moist ball, his control would not be as remarkable as it is at the present time. So they called it a spitball, they called it a saliva ball, and they called it a moist ball. I think it was very common, and of course it was outlawed in the major leagues in this same era. So where did all these teams play? Well, we've already discussed the Arcata situation. There were two other names of the baseball park in the location where it is now. And this is, I'm going to interject this. I got a messenger from Mark Gorge, who I think was a very good baseball player, younger than I am. But he messengered me, and I don't know how to messenger on my computer at home. But he asked a question. He said, I thought I read at one time that the Humboldt Crabs played on the plaza in Arcata. Well, I don't think that is true. The diamond where it is currently located at one time was called the Plaza Diamond, and it was also called the White City Diamond. So I think that may have added to the confusion. The Crabs, of course, didn't start until 1945, and I don't know when McKinley showed up there, but he would kind of get in the way for a baseball game. In Eureka, we start with Connick's Field, which was at the corner of 11th and 8th Street. Another field was the South Park Recreation Grounds. Many of you may be aware of the existence of this recreation grounds, and it was called that because it wasn't built for baseball. It was a track, and it was used for horses and motorcycles and other forms of entertainment. It is where the current Costco is on the west side of Wabash, or excuse me, west side of Broadway near Wabash. And so that was a field that they used in the early days. The Lunar Field, or the Lunar Baseball Park, was the next one that was in common use. And as we've mentioned, the location of it is up for dispute, but I believe that it was always at the corner of Harrison and F Street. We will continue to try to find evidence otherwise, because that would be helpful. But in any case, like the picture that I showed you before said, the Booner Baseball Park at the corner of Booner and F. Hard to imagine that it existed there. In 1924, George Albee developed a plan to build a location where Albee Stadium is now. The baseball park wasn't built immediately, but the football field and track were developed. Later on, the baseball park was built, and it became the home or partial home for the Humboldt Crabs. So when I was a kid, I lived on D Street and then on N Street right behind the stadium. I would go to games at Albee Stadium. That would be in the mid 50s. Other locations had field. Fortuna had the Fortuna High School they used, but also Lunar Park. Scotia had a field called League Park or Scotia Field. Baseball parks sprinkled around the county, such as Bull Creek, Blue Lake, Worthington School, Bryan Slough, Freshwater, Hydesville, and many others. I'm going to read you the name of some of the teams that were in the leagues at that time. Scotia Lumberjacks, Arcata Blues, Wildwood Cubs, Hills All-Stars, Samoa Sawmillers, Freshwater Loggers, Sequoia Cubs, Lolita Canners, Fields Landing Clam Diggers, Eureka Generals, Wiat Tie Makers, and others. In 1931, as an example of leagues, there are actually 3 leagues in Humboldt County. They had the IOOF, International Order of Oddfellows League, and that was the lowest league. And then they had the Mid-County League, and the top league was called the Humboldt County League. There are many stories of players who would play in one of the leagues, but would graduate to the league that was considered better than them. So someone would be an all-star for the Mid-County League, and somebody from the County League would say, hey, why don't you come and play for us? And they would do that. So let's see, there's another picture here. Oh, this is actually one of my personal favorites. This is the 1929 Corval Volunteer Fire Department team. And you can see the names on there. Many of these players were famous baseball players of the time, especially in back, the second player from the left, West St. Louis, was a famous pitcher. And then my favorite person in there is Ugo Gentini, who ended up as my algebra teacher in Eureka Junior High School in the 8th grade. Down on the lower right is Fred Papini. Oh, by the way, next to Fred is Ugo's brother, Dario. Down on the lower right is Fred Papini. Fred Papini became famous for taking care of the ballparks for the Crabs from the very beginning of their existence. He actually played a few times for them, but he was basically in charge of the fields and the balls for the Crabs. Pretty well known. He had a grocery store in Arcata. This is another one that says Booner Baseball Park, Booner and F Street. And you can't see anything in the background, so we don't know for sure where this exactly was, but this is the 1929 Eureka Generals. And in this picture is just to the right of the bat boy, two players over, is Babe Giannini. I grew up across the street from Babe Giannini and am still friendly with his 2 sons, Nick and Ralph. And you may not know, but if you are from Humboldt County and you enjoy pizza, Babe's Pizza was named after Babe Giannini. He was a great guy, and he had a Burgermeister distributorship in Eureka. Anyway, a good neighbor, and we lived there from, I think, 46 to 58, 1946 to 58. Anyway, one of my favorites. This is a picture I just got from Lynn McKenna. You might recognize Lynn's name. She's very active in the community, and she her father was named Nard Mafia. He's in this picture, and that's why I was able to get it. This team was called YMI. And at one time, I thought YMI was just existed in Runnerville. But I did some research, and it looks like YMI, which is Young Men's Institute, existed in various communities in Humboldt County, including Eureka and Ferndale. And so this is the YMI team, and Nard Mafia is the second from the right in the front there. It's a great picture. So it's about a 12-inch by 16-inch picture. So it was tough to copy, but anyway, there are also some names in here. Ernie Matagliati, whose son played at St. Bernard's, and Bill Roberts was a famous pitcher. He is second from the right, standing. And we don't know, and Angelo Franceschi, who I believe is John Winsler Jr.'s grandfather. So lots of connections here. This is a team called the Arcata Blues. And again, Ugo Gentini, who is third from the right standing, is in this picture, but I'm showing it to you because there are some young players here who ended up on the first Humboldt Crabs team, or were very famous players. Lou Bonamini is second from the right, kneeling, right next to Fred Papini, who we just discussed about taking care of the Arcata ballpark. Second from the left in front is Charlie Timmons. He was a famous pitcher. And then West St. Louis, we talked about him a few minutes ago. He's in the picture as well. Pretty good ball club, I bet. So this is another picture of players that ended up as a nucleus of the Humboldt Crabs. And they had Rico Pastore, who's right in the front. Let's see, he'd be fourth from the right in front, right next to Lou Bonamini. Fred Papini shows up there again, and Ernie Matagliati shows up there again. Charlie Kovakovich, Will McCoy, Pep Prentice, those are all really famous local ball players of the time. Frank Costa. And in the middle is Hogan. When I was a kid, he would walk around Eureka. He was short of stature and he always wore a cowboy hat, but he was later known as Sheriff Hogan. So a little bit of trivia there. This is an even later team of a picture of the small Arcata team. And they have uniforms that they actually used the first year on the Crabs. In the picture, you can see again, Frankie Costa, Chubb Olmeyer, I think that's spelled wrong. So Rico Pastore, Lou Bonamini, Fred Papini. On the right, in the front is Don Durden. He was a famous Eureka High School athlete, ended up playing in the backfield at Oregon State University. In the back, of course, there's other recognizable names: Will McCoy, Charlie Timmons, Jim Paul, Chet Allen, Bob Matthews, Ike Kinman, Charlie Kovakovich. Those are all names that people who are interested in baseball are very familiar with. So I think that it's time for questions. I did want to mention that there are pictures of the players who were playing on the Humboldt Crabs, and they had different sponsors, almost all the same players. So they were Chicago Bridge and Iron and Eureka Towel Company. two of the names of the sponsors of the team that ultimately became the Humboldt Crabs. So I'd love to field questions. Again, if you have any pictures or information that you'd like to share with me, it's email roosterjack62@yahoo.com, or you can call me at 707-502-8594.
Okay, yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat window and we'll get them answered. I did put your email in the chat, so if it's easier for you to just copy and paste that somewhere, you've got it right there. Yeah. One question is, were there any local equipment makers that made like bats or gloves here in the area?
Not that I'm aware of. That's kind of interesting because some of the San Francisco Giants, the current team, are using bats made on the peninsula by a bat specialist that has just appeared the last couple of years. So no one local that I'm aware of.
Someone was asking, do you have a book on sale about this subject, or do you plan on writing a book about this subject?
No. It would be fun to put together a book, but I really don't think I have enough information to fill a book, and maybe not the time, but I would love to do it. I think at some point, what might be more important is a book on the Humboldt Crabs. And I work with Maria Bonamini Briggs on different projects, baseball wise. And she has all of the information on the crabs, and it would be wonderful if someday we could put it down in one of those little Arcadia books or something like that, maybe mostly pictures, but a comment on the team from each season. And we're at, where are we, 77 or something like that for the Humboldt Crabs. So
another question, they heard that there were many local Native players, but they didn't see too many in the pictures. Was there a separate Indian league that you know of, or Indian team?
I am aware of an Indian team from Indianola. And the only, there were Native Americans playing for some of these teams, especially in Blue Lake. But I'm aware of a team from Indianola that was supposed to be all full-blooded Native Americans. And the only article I saw regarding this was they had a game scheduled with Ferndale, and it was canceled because of rain. And if I can look, I might even have the date. That was in 1898.
What's the actual year of the inaugural crab season?
1945.
Okay. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? All right, well, it looks like that may be all of them. So I just want to thank you, Jack, for all your information and all these great, oh, there is one more. Were a lot of these teams company sponsored?
Yes. They may not have used the company name, but they were sponsored by companies. So in the beginning, there were lots of logging and lumber operations, and there would be players who would be by those organizations. And I mean, it didn't have to be that industry, but it could be something else. But they would actually hire players, if they knew they were good, to come and work for their organization so that they would play for their team. And, I don't think that's any different than it is right now. There are hardball teams that bring players in, so they find jobs for them, and it's kind of the same thing.
All right. Somebody was asking when the recording will be available. I'll have the recording available probably Tuesday morning. We'll upload it onto YouTube. And I'll send out an email Tuesday, again, just as a reminder that there's a little bit of a summer break with these lecture series. And then also with the link to the YouTube page where we'll have this recording and recordings of other lectures that we've done over the last year. We've got quite a few different historical lectures that are really awesome. So if you like this, you'll probably like this as well. Again, the email, if you want to send Jack some information, it's roosterjack62@gmail. Is that correct?
Yahoo.com.
Yahoo, excuse me. So at yahoo.com. I'll go put that in the chat. I was in here earlier. Here we go. Try to get it correct. So there is the email. Also, you have my email too. So if you forgot to write it down or aren't able to get hold of Jack, you can email it to me and I can pass it along. But yeah, if you guys have any information that he can use for his research, please send it his way. Other than that, that's kind of all we've got for right now. So I will go ahead and let you guys go for the weekend. Thank you, Jack. This was fantastic. Thanks everybody for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your, it looks like kind of rainy Saturday. Hopefully it clears up here soon. And we will see you in September when after our little break. So I hope you all have a good weekend and a good summer. All right. Thanks, everyone.